I didn't think the mirror would be the thing that broke me. Not the money. Not the contract. Not even the strange, careful way she looked at me when I first walked into her house. It was the mirror in her guest bedroom, tall, antique, framed in dark wood, that made my breath catch and my hands tremble. Because the woman staring back at me wasn't a disguise. She wasn't a costume. She looked like someone who had always been waiting to exist. My hair fell softly around my shoulders, styled just enough to look effortless. The blouse, cream-colored, delicate at the collar, rested against a chest that rose and fell faster than I wanted it to. The skirt hugged my hips in a way that felt both foreign and frighteningly right. I swallowed. This is just a role, I whispered to my reflection. You're an adult. You're pretending. But the mirror didn't care about my excuses. It only showed me the truth. And the truth was this: I had been paid to be her daughter for one night, but I was the one who was about to be changed forever. The ad had been buried deep in a forum I only visited when I felt especially lonely. Seeking adult roleplay companion. One evening only. Must be over 21. Feminine presentation required. Emotional authenticity essential. Generous compensation. No photos. No details. Just an email address and a quiet pull in my chest I couldn't explain. I stared at the screen for a long time. I'd cross-dressed before, privately, carefully, like a secret I didn't trust anyone else with. Dresses folded away. Makeup wiped off before morning. Always temporary. Always hidden. But this felt different. This felt intentional. I emailed back. 2 days later, we spoke on the phone. Her name was Margaret. Her voice was calm, controlled, with a softness that trembled just beneath the surface. My daughter would be your age now, she said gently. I'm not asking you to be her. Just to share dinner with me. To let me say her name out loud again. I made sure to ask the important question. This is strictly non-sexual. Emotional only. Of course, she replied immediately. Anything else would be wrong. I should have stopped there. Instead, I said yes. The money hit my account the morning of the roleplay. Seeing it made my stomach twist. This wasn't fantasy anymore. This was commitment. I spent the afternoon preparing in a way that felt ceremonial. Showering slowly. Shaving carefully. Moisturizing skin I usually ignored. Every movement felt heavier, more deliberate. When I laid out the clothes she'd requested, soft, age-neutral, modest but feminine, I hesitated. You're not doing this for the money, a voice inside me whispered. I didn't answer it. At her house, the door opened before I even knocked. Margaret stood there, hands clasped, eyes shining with something dangerously close to tears. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she inhaled shakily. Thank you for coming. Her house smelled like tea and old books. Warm. Lived in. Framed photos lined the hallway, but I didn't look too closely. Not yet. You can use the guest room, she said. Take your time. That's how I ended up in front of the mirror. That's how the shock really began. Dinner was quiet at first. We sat across from each other, porcelain plates between us, the air thick with unspoken rules. Finally, she cleared her throat. May I call you by her name? Just for tonight. My heart pounded. Yes. She said it softly, reverently, and something inside me cracked. The name felt strange on my ears, new, but not wrong. Like a dress I hadn't realized fit until I put it on. She asked me simple things. What I studied. What music I liked. If I was happy. I answered honestly, even when honesty surprised me. I don't always feel complete, I admitted, fingers tightening around my fork. Like I'm watching my life from the outside. She nodded, eyes never leaving my face. She used to say something similar. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The lights were low. A blanket draped over the couch. Would you sit with me? She asked. I did. She didn't touch me, not really. Just close enough that I could feel her warmth. Close enough to feel chosen. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding my femininity. I was being invited into it. Later, when she asked if I'd change into pajamas, soft ones she'd bought specifically for the role, I hesitated only a moment. In the bedroom, I changed slowly, reverently. Cotton against skin. A faint floral scent. The mirror again. I looked younger. Softer. Not because I was pretending to be a child, but because I'd let myself be gentle. When I returned, she smiled. You look comfortable, she said. I feel safe, I replied before I could stop myself. The word surprised us both. She told me stories then. About her daughter. About regret. About silence after loss. I listened. And somewhere between her words, I stopped acting. I laughed when something was funny. I teared up when something hurt. I leaned my head against her shoulder without thinking. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about connection. The climax came unexpectedly. She stood and walked to the hallway, then returned with a photo. I wasn't sure if I should, she said. But I want you to see her. I looked. The resemblance wasn't physical. It was emotional. Something in the eyes. The posture. The quiet strength. I'm not her, I said softly. I know, she replied. But you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. Tears slid down my cheeks. So did you, I whispered. In that moment, I understood something crucial. I hadn't been paid to be someone else. I'd been paid to stop hiding who I already was. When the night ended, we hugged, long, steady, grounding. Thank you, she said. For trusting me. Thank you, I replied. For seeing me. Outside, the night air felt different against my skin. Like the world had adjusted its expectations. At home, I didn't rush to change. I sat on my bed, still dressed, and stared at my hands. I don't want to take this off, I admitted out loud. And for the first time, I didn't. That night didn't make me a daughter. It didn't rewrite my past. But it gave me permission. Permission to be soft. Permission to be seen. Permission to stop pretending this part of me was temporary. Sometimes transformation doesn't come from fantasy or desire. Sometimes it comes from being trusted with someone else's vulnerability, and realizing you deserve the same care. If you're watching this and wondering why certain roles call to you so deeply, ask yourself this. What part of you is still waiting to be acknowledged? Because once it is, you don't go back to the mirror the same way again. I thought the hardest part would be leaving her house. I was wrong. The hardest part was waking up the next morning and realizing I hadn't left myself there. I woke up tangled in my sheets, sunlight pressing against the curtains, my body heavy with sleep and something deeper, an ache that didn't belong to muscle or bone. For a few long seconds, I didn't move. I didn't open my eyes. I let myself exist in that quiet space where the night before still felt real. Then reality crept in. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. I'm home, I whispered. But the words didn't land. Because home no longer felt like the place I'd returned to. It felt like the place I'd left. I sat up slowly, heart pounding as my gaze drifted to the chair by my bed. The clothes from the night before were folded neatly there, the soft pajamas, the cardigan, the skirt. I hadn't had the strength to put them away. I hadn't wanted to. My fingers trembled as I reached out and brushed the fabric. Just one night, I reminded myself. Just a role. Just a job. But my chest tightened with a truth that refused to be ignored. Roles don't change you like this. I tried to go back to normal. I really did. I showered. I dressed in my usual clothes. I made coffee and scrolled my phone like nothing monumental had happened. I even laughed at a dumb video, just to prove to myself that I could. But something was off. My body felt louder. My emotions closer to the surface. When I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror, my shoulders slumped instinctively, like they were missing the softness they'd been allowed to carry the night before. I leaned closer to the glass. You're being dramatic, I told myself. The reflection didn't argue. At work, I struggled to focus. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unmoving. Conversations drifted around me like background noise I couldn't tune into. You okay? A coworker asked, pausing beside my desk. Yeah, I said automatically. Then, quieter, surprising myself, I just had a weird weekend. They smiled sympathetically and moved on. But I sat there, heart racing, thinking, you have no idea. That evening, I got an email. No subject line. Just her name. My breath caught before I even opened it. I hope you got home safely. I wanted to thank you again. Last night meant more to me than I can say. No pressure to reply. I just didn't want to let the gratitude stay unspoken. Margaret. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. No pressure. But the pressure was already inside me. I replied. I've been thinking about it all day. Thank you for trusting me. I didn't expect it to stay with me like this. The response came faster than I expected. Some connections don't end when the door closes. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling shakily. That was the moment I realized this wasn't over. The days that followed were quieter, but heavier. I found myself reaching for softer clothes without thinking. Lingering in the mirror longer than usual. Sitting differently. Moving differently. Not exaggerated. Not performative. Just honest. Late at night, alone, I pulled the cardigan back out and slipped it on over a t-shirt. The fabric settled against my shoulders like a familiar hand. Why does this feel so right? I whispered. I didn't need an answer. I already knew. The second meeting wasn't planned. At least, that's what I told myself. Margaret suggested tea. Public place. No role play. Just conversation. I want to be clear, she said on the phone. You don't owe me anything. Not a name. Not a role. Not a feeling. I know, I replied. I still want to see you. When I arrived at the cafe, she stood as soon as she saw me. Her eyes scanned me, careful, respectful, and softened. You look lighter, she said. So do you. We sat by the window, steam curling up from our cups. For a while, we talked about ordinary things. Weather. Books. The comfort of routines. Then she asked quietly, how have you been? The truth rose up before I could stop it. Different, I said. Like something woke up. And I don't know how to put it back to sleep. She nodded slowly. You don't have to. The words hit me harder than I expected. I'm scared, I admitted. What if that night didn't just give you something? What if it took something from me? What if I can't go back? Margaret reached across the table, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel her presence. What if going back isn't the goal? Tears burned my eyes. No one had ever said that to me before. That night, I let myself do something radical. I dressed fully, not for anyone else. Not for a role. For me. I chose an outfit slowly. Intentionally. Soft jeans. A blouse that skimmed my waist just right. Light makeup. Nothing dramatic. When I stood in front of the mirror, my heart pounded, not with fear, but with recognition. There you are, the reflection seemed to say. We've been waiting. I went for a walk. Just around the block. Just enough to feel the night air on my skin. A stranger smiled at me as they passed. Evening, they said warmly. I smiled back, instinctive and real. That small interaction, so ordinary, so fleeting, sent a rush through me. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't pretending. I was existing. The confrontation came from an unexpected place. My sister. She stopped by unannounced a few days later and froze when she saw me. You look, she trailed off, searching for the word. I waited. Happier, she finished. But also like you're holding something back. My throat tightened. We sat on the couch, knees almost touching. I did something, I said slowly. Something that started as a job. And turned into more. She listened. Really listened. I told her everything I could put into words. When I finished, she reached for my hand. So what now? I swallowed. I don't know. But I know I don't want to disappear again. She squeezed my hand. Then don't. It was that simple. And that terrifying. The choice came quietly. No dramatic announcement. No sudden reveal. Just a moment, standing in my bedroom, holding the clothes that had once been hidden away like contraband. I folded them neatly and placed them in my drawer, not tucked away. Not shoved to the back. Claimed. When I looked up, my reflection met my eyes, steady, calm, certain. This isn't a phase, I said softly. This is a door. And I stepped through. Margaret and I still talk. Not as mother and daughter. Not as roles. As two people who shared a night of honesty, and were brave enough to let it change them. She never asks me to be someone else. She doesn't have to. Because the greatest gift she gave me wasn't permission to pretend. It was permission to stay. If you're watching this and wondering why certain roles feel heavier than others, why some nights refuse to fade into memory, hear this. Sometimes the story you agree to tell for someone else reveals the truth you've been avoiding about yourself. And when that happens, the money doesn't matter. The role dissolves. The mirror becomes kinder. Because you finally understand. You were never paid to be someone else. You were paid, unexpectedly, irrevocably, to come home to who you are.